High above the swirling violet storms of the outer rim, nestled beneath a sky streaked with twin moons and shimmering auroras, sat a forgotten planet named Villin, a world wrapped in eternal winter, where snow fell not in flakes but in slow, feathery spirals that danced like silent spirits across jagged peaks and frozen valleys. The air was thin and sharp, each breath a sting to the lungs, and the wind howled through canyons carved by ancient glaciers. On the edge of a crumbling cliff stood a solitary cabin, built from salvaged metal and thick glacial wood, its chimney puffing gray smoke into the pale twilight. Inside lived a man named Torin, a former star mechanic who had fled the noise of galactic cities after losing everything. His crew, his purpose, and the woman he loved, in a botched warp core explosion that left him scarred and alone. He hadn't meant to stay on Villin forever, but years slipped by like shadows, and the silence became a companion he didn't hate. One night, as a blizzard raged outside with the fury of a wounded beast, Torin sat by the fire, mending an old thermal regulator with calloused fingers. The storm pounded the walls, shaking loose dust from the ceiling beams. Just as he leaned back with a groan, a soft knock echoed at the door, so faint it might have been the wind tapping at the wood. He froze. No one came here. No one could come here. Not in this weather. Not on this dead-end rock. He waited, thinking he'd imagined it. Then came another knock, weaker this time, trembling with cold. Against every instinct screaming caution, Torin rose, grabbed his pulse pistol, just in case, and cracked open the door. There, curled against the frame like a fallen leaf, was a child, no taller than his knee, shivering violently. Her skin a deep, dusky purple like twilight over a frozen lake, and her hair a wild tangle of fine white strands that clung to her face with frost. Her large, almond-shaped eyes were silver white, reflecting the dim light like moonstones. She wore nothing but a torn, glowing sash around her waist and a cracked wristband that flickered with dying energy. She looked up at him, lips blue, and whispered something in a language that sounded like wind chimes underwater. Then she collapsed. Torin didn't think, he acted. He scooped her up, stunned by how light she was, like lifting a bundle of snow-covered twigs. He laid her by the fire, wrapped her in every blanket he owned, and heated broth on the stove. All night, he watched her breathe, terrified she wouldn't make it. Her body temperature was dangerously low, and strange patterns pulsed beneath her skin, like stars blinking under dark water. By morning, she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, and when they met his, there was no fear, only wonder, as if she'd never seen a human before. He tried speaking. She tilted her head. He pointed to himself. Torin. She blinked, then touched her own chest. Liry. That was all. No last name, no planet, no explanation. Just Liry. Over the next few days, he learned she couldn't eat normal food. Her stomach rejected meat and grains. But when he accidentally dropped a piece of bioluminescent moss, used for lighting the cabin, she snatched it and devoured it with delight. After that, he began collecting the glowing plants that grew in sheltered crevices, learning which ones made her strong and which made her sleepy. She communicated mostly through gestures and soft chirps, though slowly, she began mimicking his words. Fire, she'd say, pointing. Warm. Hungry. Each word was a victory. Winter turned deeper. The storms grew fiercer. And still, no ships came searching for her. No signals, no drones, no alien rescue teams. It was as if she had fallen from the sky with no origin. Torin started to believe she was truly alone. One evening, as she sat cross-legged by the hearth drawing shapes in the ash with a stick, he noticed something strange. The symbols matched the ones on her broken wristband. When he showed her a scrap of star chart he kept pinned to the wall, she gasped, pointed to a distant cluster of stars, and made a sound like a falling note on a flute. Was that her home? Could she even remember? As weeks passed, Liry began to change. Her strength returned, and with it, curiosity. She followed Torin everywhere, into the tool shed, out to check the solar panels buried under snowdrifts, even on short treks down the mountain slope to gather ice for melting. She was fearless in the cold, often running ahead barefoot through the snow, laughing in that melodic, chiming way of hers. Once, he caught her trying to ride a startled snow lizard like a pony, clinging to its spiny back as it skittered across the ice. He yelled, half angry, half laughing, and pulled her off. She just grinned, snow in her hair, and said, "Fast!" He couldn't stay mad. But there were moments of strangeness too. At night, when the northern lights painted the sky in rippling colors, Liry would stand outside, arms raised, and hum. The snow around her feet would begin to glow faintly, and tiny crystals would rise into the air, spinning like dust motes in sunlight. Once, during a power outage, her skin lit up in soft pulses, casting enough light to read by. Torin didn't understand it, but he didn't fear it either. He began to see her not as an alien, but as a child. His child, in a way no blood could claim. He taught her how to speak properly, using picture books salvaged from his old ship's library. She learned fast, too fast. Within months, she was forming full sentences, asking questions about Earth, about stars, about why people leave. "Did you leave?" she asked once, staring into the fire. Torin hesitated. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I ran. Thought I could hide from what happened." She nodded, then said, "You found me. Not hiding now." He smiled, ruffled her snowy hair, and felt something long frozen inside him begin to thaw. They developed routines. Mornings began with melted iced tea and moss cakes. Afternoons were for repairs, exploration, or lessons. Evenings meant stories, sometimes from Torin's past, sometimes made up. Liry loved the made-up ones best. "Tell the one about the space whale again," she'd beg, curled under a blanket. So he did. The tale of a giant creature that swam between stars, feeding on cosmic dust, with eyes like nebulae and a song that could calm supernovas. She'd close her eyes and sway, as if hearing it in her bones. But peace on Villin was fragile. One morning, the sensors on Torin's old comm array crackled to life. A signal, faint, encrypted, repeating on a loop. He nearly ignored it, but something in the frequency tugged at his mechanic's instincts. He spent hours decoding it. When it finally broke open, his blood ran colder than the mountain wind. It was a bounty notice, a high-clearance alert from the Zenthri Dominion, an interstellar regime known for capturing rare species for research or worse. The image matched Liry exactly. The caption read, "Subject Larissa 7, Class V Empath, Genetic Anomaly. Last seen escaping custody near Sector G9. Reward, 500,000 stellas. Do not approach, high psychic potential." Torin stared at the screen, heart hammering. Custody. Escaping. So she hadn't just fallen from the sky. She'd been taken, experimented on, hunted, and now someone was looking for her. He looked over at Liry, who was happily stacking firewood, humming to herself. She glanced up, saw his face, and stopped. "What wrong?" she asked. He forced a smile. "Nothing. Just bad wiring." But that night, he lay awake, listening to the wind, wondering how long it would be before hunters came. He started preparing, reinforced the cabin doors, set up motion sensors around the perimeter, buried the comm array so it couldn't transmit their location, taught Liry how to hide, where the secret crawl space was beneath the floorboards, how to mute her glow if needed. She didn't understand at first. "Why hide?" she asked. "No one heard us." He knelt before her, took her small purple hands in his. "Some people don't see you as a person, Liry. They see a thing, a prize. And I won't let that happen." Tears welled in her silvery eyes. "You protect me?" "Always," he said, and he meant it. Weeks passed. No ships landed. No footprints in the snow. Maybe they were safe. Maybe the signal had been old. But Torin couldn't relax. He watched the skies like a hawk. Then, one evening, as Liry played with a magnetic puzzle he'd built from spare parts, the motion alarm blared. A single red light flashed on the control panel northeast ridge. Something was moving up the mountain. He grabbed his rifle and peered through the scope. Far below, 3 figures in black exosuits trudged through the storm, scanning the terrain with handheld devices. Their armor bore the Zenthri insignia, a serpent coiled around a dying star. Hunters. And they were getting closer. Torin shut the shutters, lit only a small lamp, and told Liry to go to the crawl space. "No!" she cried. "I stay. Help." "You are helping," he said firmly, "by staying quiet. Promise me." Reluctantly, she crawled in, pulling the hatch closed behind her. The hunters arrived at dusk. They surrounded the cabin, weapons drawn. The leader, a tall figure with a voice modulator, called out, "We know she's here. Hand over the subject, and you walk away unharmed." Torin didn't answer. He waited. When the first hunter kicked the door, he fired a warning shot into the snow. The reply was a plasma blast that shattered the window. Torin ducked, rolled, and returned fire, hitting one hunter in the leg. The fight erupted, blasts lighting up the snow, shouts echoing through the peaks. He used the terrain, the narrow paths, the ice caves he knew by heart. He wasn't a soldier, but he was desperate. And desperation makes even mechanics dangerous. During a lull, he heard a high-pitched tone, like glass singing. He turned. Liry stood in the doorway, her arms outstretched, her entire body glowing like a beacon. The snow around her lifted in a swirling vortex, freezing midair into sharp, glittering shards. The hunters froze not from cold, but from shock. One raised his weapon. Liry screamed. Not a cry of fear, but a piercing, resonant note that split the air. The ice shards shot forward like daggers. Armor cracked. Guns dropped. 2 hunters fell, stunned, encased in sudden ice. The third turned to run, but the ground beneath him turned slick, and he tumbled down the slope, vanishing into the storm. Silence returned. Smoke curled from the damaged cabin. Torin ran to Liry, who collapsed into his arms, weak and shivering. "You were supposed to hide," he whispered, holding her tight. "I protect you," she murmured before passing out. Back inside, he tended to her, wrapping her in warmth, whispering reassurances. When she woke, she looked at him with solemn eyes. "They come again," she said. He nodded. "Maybe, but we'll be ready." She reached up, touched his scarred cheek. "You not alone. I not alone. We family." Tears stung his eyes. He pulled her close. "Yeah," he said, voice thick. "We are." Days later, Torin found a new purpose. He began modifying the old shuttle buried in the glacier hangar, a rusted, forgotten relic from his past. If they couldn't stay, they'd leave. Find a safer world. Somewhere green, warm, far from empires and hunters. Liry helped as much as she could, using her strange energy to reactivate dead circuits, her fingers sparking with soft light as she worked. She laughed when the engine coughed to life for the first time, hugging Torin so hard he stumbled. "We fly?" she asked. "We fly," he promised. But the universe has a way of testing promises. One night, the sky split open, not with auroras, but with the blinding descent of a massive warship, its underbelly glowing red as it hovered above the valley. This wasn't a bounty team. This was a command vessel. The Zenthri weren't sending hunters anymore. They were sending an army. Torin stood at the door, pulse rifle in hand, Liry beside him, small but unflinching. Below, ramps lowered. Figures marched out, dozens of them armed, led by a towering officer in polished obsidian armor. Through the loudspeaker came a voice both mechanical and chillingly calm. "Return the empath. This is your final warning. Resistance is extinction." Torin looked down at Liry. Her silver eyes burned with defiance. She whispered, "They don't know what I can do." He smirked. "Then let's show them." And as the first shots rang out, father and daughter stepped forward. Not into defeat, but into legend. The first plasma bolt scorched the snow between them, sending up a geyser of steam and shattered ice. Torin yanked Liry back just in time, diving behind the reinforced corner of the cabin as a barrage of energy fire turned the front wall into molten slag. The warship above pulsed with ominous light, scanning the terrain like a predator locking onto prey. But something strange happened. The scans flickered, glitched, then failed entirely. Liry stood trembling, not from fear, but from something deeper, something rising inside her like a storm tide. Her hair lifted as if underwater, glowing faintly, and her skin shimmered with veins of silver light. She wasn't just scared. She was awake. Torin had seen her do small things. Make moss glow, freeze water with a touch, calm wild animals with a hum. But this was different. This was power cracking open. As the Zenthri troops advanced in formation, their leader barking orders through a modulator, Liry stepped forward again. This time without hesitation. She raised her hands, palms outward, and sang. It wasn't a word. It wasn't even a sound meant for human ears. It was a frequency, pure, resonant, ancient, that vibrated through the mountain itself. The snow beneath the soldiers' feet moved. Not drifted, moved. Like living things, the frozen crystals surged upward, wrapping around boots, climbing legs, hardening into jagged cuffs of ice. One by one, the troops froze in place, encased from the knees down, then the waist, then up to their throats as the cold spread faster than their heaters could counter. The commander roared, firing his pulse cannon blindly. The beam streaked toward Liry, but Torin lunged, shoving her aside. The blast grazed his shoulder, spinning him into the snow. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but he gritted his teeth and scrambled for cover. Above, the warship adjusted its aim, targeting systems recalibrating. Then silence. Not the absence of sound. A true silence. As if the world had been muted. The wind stopped. The crackle of flames died. Even the distant rumble of the ship's engine vanished. And in that stillness, Liry's voice changed. It dropped an octave, deepened, multiplied, as if more than one being spoke through her. From her lips came words in a language older than stars. You take the child of Villin. You break the bond of sky and soil. You wake what should sleep. And then the mountain answered. A low groan echoed from deep below. The ground trembled. Cracks spiderwebbed across the glacier. From the fissures rose not lava, but light. A soft, blue-white radiance that pulsed like a heartbeat. And within it, shapes began to form. Tall, slender figures made of ice and starlight. Their faces smooth and featureless except for eyes that burned like distant suns. They stepped forward silently, gliding over the snow, surrounding the Zenthri forces. Torin stared, blood dripping from his wound, heart pounding. What are they? Liry turned to him, her eyes now completely silver. No pupils, no whites, just endless mirrors reflecting the sky. Guardians, she whispered, though the voice wasn't entirely hers. They sleep under the ice. I woke them. The Zenthri commander screamed orders, but his men couldn't move. The ice beings reached out with long, crystalline fingers. Where they touched armor, it shattered like glass. Weapons disintegrated into frost. One by one, the soldiers were lifted, not violently but gently, and carried toward the great crevasse that split the northern ridge. Without a sound, they vanished into the abyss, swallowed by the glowing light below. Then the warship fired. A beam of crimson energy lanced down, aimed directly at Liry. Torin didn't think, he ran. He tackled her just as the beam struck the spot where she'd stood, vaporizing rock and ice in an explosion that threw them both backward. He landed hard, pain screaming through his ribs, but rolled to shield her body with his own. Above, the ship prepared to fire again. But the mountain wasn't done. From the depths of the glacier, a massive shape began to rise. A colossal figure, 10 times the height of a man, formed of ancient ice and swirling auroras. Its face was carved with symbols Torin recognized from Liry's drawings. It raised one arm and the sky ripped. A vortex opened, swirling blues and violets, like a tear in space-time. The warship systems overloaded. Alarms blared. Engines sputtered. With a final, desperate attempt to escape, it fired one last shot. But the beam curved midair, absorbed into the vortex like smoke into a flame. Then, with a sound like 1,000 bells breaking, the ship was pulled upward, dragged into the rift, shrinking until it blinked out of existence. Silence returned. The smaller ice guardians bowed to Liry, then dissolved into mist. The great titan lowered its arm and slowly sank back into the glacier, the light fading, the cracks sealing shut as if nothing had happened. Only the snow remained, and the two of them. Torin lay on his back, breathing hard, staring at the twin moons now peeking through the clouds. Liry sat beside him, her glow dimming, her eyes returning to normal. She looked dazed, exhausted, like a child who'd woken from a long dream. Did I do that? She asked, voice small. You saved us, Torin said, wincing as he sat up. But what was that? Who are you, really? She shook her head. I don't know. I remember flashes. A ship, bright lights, pain. They called me Subject Larissa 7. Said I was made from star ice and lost songs. That I was the last. She looked at her hands. But when I saw the mountain, it felt like home. Torin studied her, really studied her. Not just as a girl he'd taken in, but as something more. Something other. Yet still undeniably his daughter. We need answers, he said finally. And we're not getting them here. Days passed. Torin patched himself up using old medgel and sheer stubbornness. The shuttle, once a rusted hulk, now hummed with life, thanks to Liry's strange ability to reactivate dormant tech just by touching it. Circuits lit up. Engines purred. Even the navigation system, long dead, rebooted with a cheerful chime. But as they prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. The broken wristband Liry had worn since arrival, cracked and dark for months, suddenly flickered, then lit up in a soft, pulsing rhythm. Symbols scrolled across its surface. Coordinates. A message. Torin decoded it using his old shipboard computer. It read, "If you are receiving this, she is alive. Do not trust the stars they sell you. Seek the hollow moon of Nethra. There the truth sleeps. Dr. Maylis, Villin Research Outpost. Deceased." Torin frowned. There was no research outpost on Villin. At least, none on any official chart. Liry touched the band, tears in her eyes. "Maylis, I remember that voice. She was kind. She tried to help me escape. So they weren't just running anymore. They were hunting for truth. They launched at dawn. The shuttle tore through the upper atmosphere, shaking like a beast waking from hibernation. Outside, the planet shrank behind them, a white marble veiled in storms. Inside, Liry stared out the window, silent, her fingers pressed against the glass. "Are you scared?" Torin asked. She nodded. "Yes, but also excited. Like something waits for me." He smiled. "Well, whatever it is, you've got backup." He tapped his rifle. "And a grumpy old mechanic with a bad shoulder." She giggled. Best backup ever. Their journey took weeks. They avoided major trade routes, jumped through asteroid fields, refueled at abandoned way stations. Along the way, Liry kept changing. She began dreaming in colors, visions of a moon covered in silver forests, of a temple buried beneath ice, of a door with her face carved into it. She started speaking in riddles sometimes, saying things like, "The song remembers the singer," or "Time is a circle with no end." Torin didn't understand, but he listened. Then, one night, as they drifted near the edge of the Nethra system, the ship's sensors picked up something impossible. A moon, small, cratered, seemingly dead, was emitting a low, rhythmic pulse. Not mechanical, biological, like a heartbeat. "That's it," Liry whispered. "The hollow moon." They landed cautiously. The surface was smooth, reflective, like polished glass. No gravity anomalies, no atmosphere, but somehow Liry could breathe. So could Torin, though he needed a mask. As they stepped out, the ground warped beneath their feet, forming steps that led downward. Into the moon. Inside, it wasn't hollow, it was alive. Tunnels lined with glowing veins pulsed with energy. Walls shifted subtly, rearranging like living tissue. Strange plants floated in midair, feeding on light. And everywhere, symbols matched those on Liry's wristband and the Glacier Guardians. At the center of the moon stood a vast chamber. In it, a single throne of ice, and on it, a figure. Not alive, not dead, suspended in a block of crystal, frozen in time. It was Liry, or rather, a version of her. Older, taller, dressed in flowing robes of starlight. Her expression serene, wise, sorrowful. Torin staggered back. "What the hell is this?" Liry stepped forward, tears streaming. "That's me. From before. From after." A voice filled the chamber. Not spoken, but thought directly into their minds. "Welcome home, daughter of the first song. You have returned to begin the cycle again." Images flooded Torin's mind. A race of beings made of light and ice. The original inhabitants of Villin, who seeded life across galaxies. They created empathic children like Liry to carry their knowledge to survive extinction. But the Zenthri found them, hunted them, wiped them out. The last guardian uploaded the essence of their people into a single child, Liry, then sent her into space in a cryopod, hoping she'd survive, grow, and one day return to awaken the core. But she hadn't come back by choice. She'd been reborn. "The cycle," Liry whispered. "I died, long ago, and my soul returned. To try again." Torin felt the weight of it, the grief, the destiny, the loneliness. She wasn't just a girl. She was a legacy, a second chance. "And the doctor?" he asked. "Maylis. She was one of ours," the voice replied. "A scientist who faked her death, stayed behind to protect you. She encoded the truth into your band. She loved you." Liry fell to her knees, sobbing. "I forgot her." Torin knelt beside her, pulling her close. "You remember now. That's what matters." Suddenly, alarms blared, both in the chamber and on the shuttle's remote feed. Sensors detected multiple warp signatures approaching fast. Too many to count. The Zenthri weren't done. They'd followed the signal from the moon. Torin looked at Liry. "Can you fight them here? With this place?" She wiped her tears, stood, and faced the throne. "No, but she can." With a breath, she placed her hand on the crystal. Light exploded. The frozen Liry opened her eyes, and the moon woke up, The hollow moon of Nethra did not tremble, it sang. A deep, resonant tone rolled through its core, vibrating the very fabric of space around it. The frozen figure in the crystal stepped forward as the shell shattered into 1,000 shimmering motes that swirled like fireflies before dissolving into Liry's skin. For a heartbeat, she stood still, her body glowing with ancient light, her silver eyes reflecting galaxies. Then she exhaled, and the power settled within her like a storm returning to calm waters. She wasn't just Liry anymore. She was all of them, the last daughter, the reborn guardian, the keeper of the first song. And she was ready. Above, the Zenthri fleet emerged from Warp 1, then 10, then 30 warships forming a deadly ring around the moon. Their commander, a cold-eyed general clad in black armor, issued a final ultimatum across all frequencies. Surrender the empath or be erased from existence. But the moon answered. From its surface rose pillars of crystalline energy, shooting into space like spears forged from starlight. The ship's shields faltered. Weapons failed. One by one, their engines stalled, caught in a gravitational pulse that didn't obey known physics. Some tried to flee, but the space around the moon bent, trapping them like insects in amber. And then Liry spoke, not through comms, not through sound, through thought, broadcast across every mind aboard the fleet. You took me, you broke me, you called me a thing, but I am not yours. I am not a weapon. I am a people, and we are not extinct. A wave of light erupted from the moon, a silent shockwave that washed over the fleet. Not destructive, not violent, but transformative. Where it touched, armor cracked open not with explosions, but with vines of glowing moss. Guns turned to sculptures of ice. Holographic displays flickered with images of home. Families, forests, forgotten kindnesses. Soldiers wept. Commanders dropped their weapons. The will to fight dissolved like frost in morning sun. One by one, the ships powered down. Surrendered. Torin watched from the chamber, tears streaking his weathered face. He had come to this place fearing he would lose her, to destiny, to war, to something too vast for a man like him to understand. But as Liry turned to him, her glow softening, her smile warm and familiar, he knew she was still his daughter, no matter how much power she held, no matter how ancient her soul. "We go home?" she asked. He laughed, wiping his eyes. "Yeah, we go home." Years passed. Villin changed. Where once only snow and silence ruled, now life returned. The glaciers receded slightly, revealing valleys where bioluminescent flowers bloomed in hues of violet and gold. Streams flowed beneath glassy ice, teeming with strange, gentle fish. Birds, pale and feathered with iridescent down, circled the peaks, singing melodies that echoed Liry's hum. The cabin was rebuilt, bigger now with wide windows facing the sunrise. Torin, older, slower, with a limp from old injuries and a heart that ached less with time, spent his days fixing things, teaching young visitors, and writing stories no one believed. Stories of ice guardians, of a moon that dreamed, of a girl who saved 2 worlds. And Liry, she grew not just in height but in peace. Her purple skin remained, her white hair long and often braided with living vines that curled gently around her crown. Her eyes still shone with starlight when emotion ran deep, but more often, they sparkled with laughter. She never forgot her purpose. She visited the glacier temple regularly, communing with the sleeping guardians, ensuring the balance held. She sent messages into the void, songs encoded in radio waves, telling any survivors of her kind, "You are not alone. Come home." But she also lived. She learned to bake, badly, loved hot tea with too much sugar, and adopted a 3-legged snow lizard she named Pippin, who followed her everywhere like a grumpy shadow. She danced in the auroras, barefoot in the snow, humming tunes that made flowers bloom in her footsteps. Then came him. His name was Dane, a traveler, a botanist from the green world of Elyra, who had come to Villin studying extremophile plants. His ship crash-landed during a storm, and he stumbled to the cabin half-frozen, babbling about glowing moss with emotional resonance. Torin nearly shot him on principle. But Liry laughed the moment she saw him, really laughed, and something in the air shifted. Dane was tall, kind-eyed, with curly brown hair always escaping his scarf and a habit of talking to plants like they'd answer back. He wasn't strong or fast. He didn't carry weapons. But he listened, truly listened, when Liry spoke of her dreams, of the song inside her, of the loneliness that sometimes still crept in. "You're not just a legend," he told her once, sitting beside her on a cliff under the twin moons. "You're a person." And I'd be honored to know you. All of you. She looked at him, her heart pounding not with power, but with something softer, deeper. I think, she said slowly, I would like that. They fell in love quietly, over shared meals, stargazing, repairing his broken ship together. He didn't fear her strength. He admired it, but he also celebrated her fragility. How she cried at sad stories, how she hugged Pippin like he was her baby, how she whispered goodnight to the wind. When he asked Torin for her hand, the old mechanic just stared at him, arms crossed. You break her heart? Torin growled. And I'll bury you under the glacier so deep even the ice spirits won't find you. Dane swallowed. Understood. Then Torin grinned. Good. Now go tell her. Their wedding was held under the northern lights, on a field of untouched snow where flowers had begun to grow in the shape of a spiral, Liry's favorite pattern. There were no priests, no grand ceremonies. Just friends. Locals who had moved to Villin seeking quiet, scientists who respected the planet's new sanctity, even a few former Zenthri soldiers who had renounced their empire and sought redemption. Liry wore a gown woven from moonlight moss and mountain silk, her hair crowned with glowing blossoms. Torin walked her down a path lit by floating lanterns shaped like stars. When she reached Dane, he took her hands and said, You are the most impossible, beautiful thing I've ever known. And she smiled. And you're the first person who made me feel normal. They kissed as the auroras flared above, painting the sky in celebration. Time moved on. The cabin became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the pitter-patter of small feet. Liry and Dane had children. Twins, a boy and a girl, both with hints of purple in their skin at birth, both with hair like fresh snow. They giggled in colors no human language could name, and sometimes, when they slept, tiny crystals formed on their blankets. Torin, now with a full beard streaked white and a wooden cane carved with alien runes, rocked in a chair by the fire, watching them play. Liry sat beside him, older, wiser, radiant. Think they'll have your powers? He asked. She shrugged. Maybe, or maybe there'll be something new. That's okay too. He nodded. You gave this world a second chance. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You gave me one. Outside, Dane chased the twins through the snow, pretending to be a hungry snowworm. Pippin the lizard barked. Yes, somehow he barked, and waddled after them. The wind carried music, soft, wordless, eternal. No wars came, no hunters. The galaxy remembered the fall of the Zenthri fleet, the awakening of the hollow moon, and left Villin in peace. It became a sanctuary, a legend, promise, and in the heart of it all stood a family, born from loss, built on love, written into the stars. Snow fell gently on Villin, no longer a sign of endless winter but of peace. Liry stood by the window, watching her children laugh in the glowing garden. Their tiny hands made frost flowers bloom with every touch. Torin sat by the fire, older now, his scars softened by time and smiles. He sipped tea, listening to the hum of the auroras above. Dane wrapped an arm around Liry, kissing her temple. She leaned into him, heart full, no longer torn between worlds. The cabin buzzed with warmth, stories, and Pippin's grumpy chirps. No wars came, no hunters dared. The galaxy remembered. The hollow moon slept peacefully, its song now a lullaby. Liry visited the glacier temple sometimes, leaving offerings of light. But she always returned home, to love, to family, to joy. Her children grew strong, kind, curious, never weapons, only wonders. Torin taught them star maps and silly jokes, calling them his little aliens. One day he passed his old wrench to Liry's son. Fix things, he said. Don't break them. Years later, at sunset, Torin took his last breath smiling, surrounded by those he loved. Liry held his hand, singing the first song until his soul drifted like snow into the sky. She buried him beneath the tallest ice pine, where the wind whispered his name, and life went on gentle, bright, unafraid. In the end, they weren't just survivors. They were home,